Good morning and welcome to Untitled Chapter. We're so glad to have you with us as always. And today's teaching by Jetsunma Ahkon Lhamo is entitled Keep Your Practice Alive. By that she means your spiritual practice. And this was taught originally in 1997. We hope you enjoy it.
Well, this is an exciting time. We're thinking about His Holiness's return to his seat, and always that brings us a mixture of feelings, feeling of joy and anticipation, tremendous relief because we've been longing to see His face for so long, and it's always refreshing and nourishing to us to see our teacher's face. But then there's also the other kind of anticipation, the anxiety that comes with, did I remember to mow everything? Is everything painted just right? And all the tension that goes from that to the neurotic assumptions that He's going to look into our mind and take note of every single day we didn't say much. So we go through all of that, and wouldn't it be nice if we could finally understand that this is actually a display of our own mind, that this is an opportunity. That anytime we see or know that we are meeting again with our teacher, generally there is some very profound or deep kind of response. And the display of that response really depends on our own habitual tendency. And it's really interesting. We look at what's happening and we think, oh, His Holiness is coming. That over there is making me feel like this. And in fact, the posture that we might take could be a little deeper, could be a little more profound. We could actually notice that if what we're seeing is a display of our own neuroses, which is our own, I don't know what, guilt complexes, you know them, those neurotic parts. If we see a large display of that, if that's what it amounts to with us, well, that's a blessing. Because it gives us a way to view the content of our own mind stream. It helps us to understand how we respond. And from that we can learn a little bit about how we respond to our own Buddha nature. Whether we are comfortable with our practice. Whether we are engaging in our practice in such a way as to really awaken to the notion of our primordial wisdom nature, or ground of being. And on the other hand, as I said, if we're trying very hard that maybe we didn't get done before His Holiness was announced, might want to look at too, because it helps us to see how we treat our own Dharma experience. This is a wonderful opportunity to gauge. And my suggestion would be to each and every one of you to stop and examine your mind. Many come up when the head of our lineage returns to us, or our own root guru. I experience that also. Students have that same response to me. If they haven't seen me for a while, when they see me the next time, they go, or yeah, I've done really well. Look at me. So it's kind of interesting. But the best thing about it is how it gives each and every one of us the opportunity to turn that into an opportunity, and to really examine ourselves, examine the depth and profundity of our practice, our stick-to-itiveness, our motivation is revealed at a time like this in a major way. And if we find that we're satisfied with ourselves, well, that's a great blessing. And if we're not satisfied with ourselves and we see that we're reacting in a neurotic way, that's also a great blessing if you utilize it and turn it into a blessing. So that's a piece of advice from my heart in dealing with the return of one's teacher. Having been through it myself a number of times, I can speak to you from direct experience. It's a tremendous opportunity to really become more comfortable with yourself as a practitioner, more deep in your response to the path and your own experience, and I hope that you'll utilize it as such. For those of you that are new, well, you're pretty lucky. You're pretty lucky because for you this is a brand new experience, and it's kind of like a new romance. It's all lollipops and roses and all that kind of stuff. The work comes later, just like any marriage. If this is your first experience and you're not that familiar with His Holiness, then I beg you to make use of this opportunity. He is a living Buddha. He doesn't say that about himself, but I say that about him. And so do many, many other people. He's considered to be a living Buddha. He is, if you had seen in this temple and in this place one photon of light, then you have to think that he's like a million suns. That's how vast his wisdom and compassion are. And he is a miracle to behold. Amazing to even see someone of his capacity alive on the earth walking with 2 feet. He does walk with 2 feet. So I'm happy to be able to share that tremendous joy with you. He's nothing if not the Prince world. So today I would like to talk a little bit about our path. Particularly, I would like to talk about our own relationship with the Buddha Dharma, because as I say, now is a very appropriate time to think about this. Now is a very important time to sit and evaluate and use the opportunities that are put in front of us. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to follow me with your mind. We're talking mentally. This doesn't mean kind of space out and sit in your meditative posture and intuit what I'm saying. You can hear what I'm saying. You don't have to intuit it or make it up. I will tell you directly and you can listen. So you have that freedom. So let's follow this logically. And whatever else is going on, let's just leave it a little bit, because it's important to experience the logic that one has to experience in order to turn the mind to Dharma, in order to prepare oneself for such an experience as His Holiness's visit. Well, first of all, you've had many teachings on turning the mind toward Dharma, many teachings on this tremendous opportunity. You've had many teachings on cause and result, many teachings on how to accomplish the Dharma. But there are certain things that you need to reevaluate over and over again, because to hold the logic of this evaluation in your mind is paramount to doing a good job on the path and to accomplishing your goal. Because you have to remember, first and foremost, you have a goal on this path. You're not here just to hang out. You have a goal to accomplish. And of course that goal is, as was stated many times before, the twofold purpose, self and other. That is to say that we have the intention of benefiting ourselves and liberating ourselves in order to others, and we have the intention of benefiting others so that there will be an end to suffering or cessation to suffering. So that's the purpose. And the purpose is mated, married, combined. You can't separate those two purposes. If you separate the purpose of self from the purpose of others, you have nothing. These are one. And if you, for yourself, wish to eliminate suffering from your own experience, if you wish to exit samsara, abandon cyclic existence, and awaken to the primordial ground of being, that naturally awakened state, then in order to do that, you have to accomplish the path, and it cannot be done without that intention serving others as well. Because we come to find out, as we go more and more deeply into the path, that in fact, if it is our own Buddha nature we wish to awaken to, upon awakening to that nature, we find out that there is no separation between self and other. No distinction. So that in truth, to attain liberation is to attain the liberation of all sentient beings. To realize, to awaken to one's nature, is to realize indisputably that there is no separation, that there is no distinction between oneself and others. So then it would be pretty much impossible to think of a way to honor one's own goals on the path of liberation without honoring the goals or the needs of others as well, and equally. And then beyond that, there is the logical understanding, and again, this is not something you need to intuit, this is logical, that if I come to that place in my logic, in my innermost development, and I'm really understanding that, then I have to look around only at this room. And as a bodhisattva, and many of us have taken the bodhisattva vow, I have to say, well, that's true then the objective of self and the objective of others, the goal of self and the goal of others, these are the same, but look at this room. I am one, and even only in this room, you are many. Therefore, service to others becomes even more important on the path. And it becomes even more logical and reasonable to practice selflessly because there are so many others. Then we go on, of course, and we discover as well that we've come to the point where when we examine cyclic existence as false, and if we truly have the courage, and it does take a certain degree of courage, to examine the conditions of other sentient beings, then we might, okay, well, in this room, things aren't too bad, that I can tell nobody's dying right at the moment. You know, eventually we're all going to kick the bucket. Right now, there don't seem to be any trucks slamming through the room. Nobody's getting run over. Nobody's screaming in pain. If you are, please don't scream. So things are not as bad here as they might be, but if we go beyond and we examine cyclic existence, we find that it's not so in all areas, that even in the human realm, in this world, in this day, there is suffering so intense and so unbearable that somehow, as a bodhisattva, having considered the faults of cyclic existence and the equality of all that lives, I find that I cannot bear it. And so as a bodhisattva, we all begin to practice that way. We cannot bear it. If we, eventually after practicing for this kind of logical progression of thought, after a while it becomes more real to us, and we discover that if a cockroach is being stepped on, we realize our indivisibility even with that. We realize that we are even one with all creatures, not only humans. And that being the case, we develop sorrow for the suffering of that tiny creature. Oh, it doesn't mean that we like cockroaches any more than we did before, but we have a compassion and an understanding of the fundamental nature of that experience. So we stop stepping on bugs, and we try to stop others from stepping on bugs. And little by little, we move through the progression of spiritual growth to the point where now we look at the world and old age, sickness, and death are no longer bearable. It's just so horrible that each and every one of us will come to that end. So unthinkable. And it's so unbearable that there should be hatred and prejudice in the world. So unthinkable and so inappropriate. when we understand the nature of our being and how to look in the face of any other sentient being and feel hatred, prejudice, bigotry, then that's looking in one's own face and damaging one's own self, one's own nature. That's hatred come around again. And you really can't point that kind of hatred at someone else without also getting it yourself. There's no way for that to happen. Simply put, that's the truth. So then we look at all the different realms of cyclic existence, and we see again that there are many different realms. There are the lower realms, the hellish realms, there are the animal realms, there are the human realms, there are the many different God realms. So many different realms of existence, both seen and unseen. And the Buddha tells us that there are uncountable sentient beings, not just the ones that we can see with our eyes, but many uncountable sentient beings just filling space, that many of which are in formless realms and we cannot see them. And that each and every one of them has their own particular kind of suffering that they have due to their own habitual tendency and karma. And when we think about that, that also becomes unbearable, unthinkable. We are taught as Buddhists to simply walk out into a field right here. You can walk right here at KPC, 1800 River Road. You can walk outside and stand in the middle of a field and you think, isn't this lovely? It's very calm here. There aren't any people standing around, so I'm all alone. No, you're not. No, you're not. The space around you is filled with uncountable beings that you can't relate to or can't see. Beneath your feet are uncountable beings. You have no idea how many anthills there are surrounding you, and bugs and worms and microbes and things that are conscious in their way, in their fashion. And even as we look at distance all around us, we look at the forest or we look at the undergrowth and we can't see the animals that are crawling around. We don't know if we flushed out everything that was in that area of space, we would be amazed at how much wildlife there was. So we find ourselves then in samsara, in cyclic existence, walking this path, becoming aware on a profound and deep level for the first of life as it truly is around us, beginning to recognize the faults of cyclic existence and beginning to give rise to the bodhicitta in such a way that we have a great compassion for all that lives. Not only tolerance, not only nice guyness, but a real compassion, a real identification for all that lives, and a loving concern. Now we have to remember that this is the real reason, this is why we practice the path. I know I harp on this every time I'm here, but this is so important because this is the first thing that we forget when we're not constantly reminded. It's the first thing that we forget. Then we get into practicing Dharma by rote. We get into that pitiful, horrible place where you begin to practice Dharma because that's what you've been doing for the last 10 years. And that's not a good place to be. At that point, one's practice runs dry, one's heart is empty, one wonders what in the world the point is, one sort of loses the way. And obstacles then begin to arise naturally in the path. They begin to arise because there is a lack of stability on the path. So we have to maintain our motivation and our intention. And motivation and intention on this path are everything. They are absolutely everything. If we're practicing because we've practiced for the last 10 years, well, it's right in the same ballpark, really, and in that case, as anything else we've done for the last 10 years. What else have you done for the last 10 years? Let's see, I've watched a lot of Star Trek in the last 10 years. You know? I mean, what else we've done? I don't know. What have you done for the last 10 years? There are things that we do, and we do them because we do them all the time. It's just habitual tendency. It's like that old joke about the daughter asking her mother, why do we cut the end off the pot roast? Mom didn't know. Her mother did it, and her mother before her did it. And come to find out, the real reason is why Grandma's pot was too small. Great reason to practice Dharma. Because we just do it, and that's just how it is. So we have to refresh ourselves on the path, and these found thoughts that teachers, I mean, really any teacher worth their salt will come in here, and even if they're going to begin to give you a very advanced cycle of teachings, maybe they're going to take you all the way, and they're going to give you Joden Togyo, oh wow, that heavy stuff. They're still going to start it with these words, or words like them. The basic, fundamental, turning the mind towards Dharma, these thoughts that are so necessary to keep us real practitioners. We have to have that logic because that logic is necessary to refresh ourselves. We have to reason that through in order to bathe in the inspiration, if you will forgive my waxing poetic, the inspiration of walking the path. It never become a dry occupation or something that we do by rote, and yet it does. And it does because we forget what the point is. Excuse me. So, then let us examine again what it is that we have to consider and how it is that we should hold the path. This is of extreme importance. And I feel like it's the best thing that I can offer you, a way to keep your practice alive. Because it is a tremendous challenge for Westerners to practice Dharma. Tremendous challenge. Because we can't do it in the way that we're used to practicing religion. You can't go on Christmas and Easter and forget the rest of it. You can't go on Sunday or Saturday and then say, okay, I've done that for this week. You can't do that. The Buddha Dharma isn't like that. And if you're playing church, you're in the wrong place. Something's wrong somewhere. Because the Buddha Dharma is a way of life. It is a path. It is a method. And it has to be held to all the time. And it's equally important what you do in the monastic situation or what you do in your temple, what you do in church. That's equally important to what you do within you. In fact, I have to say, since you're not at the temple all that often, well, some of you are groupies, I don't know, but I say basically you're not at the temple all that often. In that case, what you do inside is much more important because that's where the bulk of your time is. That's where the weight of your time is. So how you hold your path, how you hold your connection, how you hold and build on the devotion, how you hold your view, this then becomes your inner competency, in other words, in that secret, deep place inside of you where no one can check up, really, but you. That's the most important. And we have a hard time with that because we really don't know how to practice in that way. So it takes learning, reorienting ourselves, maybe falling off the horse, coming back. But mostly we have to make use of these fundamental thoughts that the Buddha gave us in order to constantly refresh ourselves, in order to turn our minds again and again and again toward Dharma. Now, if we are practicing the path, we may find that in practicing the path, we are using the path in the same way that we are using many other experiences in our life. And that has to be examined, and then we have to determine for ourselves what should be abandoned and what should be picked up, what should be taken up and what should be left aside. Because if we are using the Dharma in the same way that we use other experiences in our lives, it will be, unfortunately, as ordinary as those other experiences. And yet, Dharma is not ordinary. Now let's define ordinary. Okay, ordinary comes from, ordinary are those things which can be found in the wheel of death and rebirth, which can be found in cyclic existence. So no matter how amazing it might seem, like you might think of, I don't know, the World Trade Center or the Mars, the little, that guy that's over there. I think about that, and that to us sounds pretty darn amazing, doesn't it? But everything that made it up came from samsara, right? All the raw materials, all the ideas came from ordinary sentient beings. Pretty hot stuff, but ordinary. Now, Dharma is different. It is considered extraordinary because what actually makes the fabric of the path, what comprises the path, did not come from cyclic existence, did not come from ordinary things and cyclic existence. Maybe the paper it was written on. Okay, I'll grant you that because I know some of you are there going, I know. I'm human too. But the path itself arose from the mind of the Buddha after he had attained enlightenment. And so then, after some time of practice, the Buddha then brought the path in the form of teaching and turning the wheel to the earth and made it available to others. But it was of his realization that this was possible. And it was from the primordial ground of his realization that the path naturally arose. So in a way, you could say, well, definitely, you could say that the ground of being, our primordial ground of being, our nature, our awakened nature, that is the seed of the gift of Dharma. And then you examine Dharma itself and you see that it is a path or a method arising from this extraordinary source. The result of this path or method is an extraordinary result which cannot be gotten any other way other than relying on that fundamental ground of being, that seed of enlightenment. The result of the path is enlightenment also. So the seed or the ground, the method or the path, and the fruit or result, they are the same. They are the same, and that is the Buddha. That is how Buddhahood is made up. It arises from itself. In a way, another way to put it is to say that if you want to grow an apple, you have to rely on an apple seed originally in order to make a tree, in order to make an apple. And the seed and the fruit are always consistent. So Dharma is not ordinary, but we have miraculously, being incredibly talented people, we found a way to use Dharma in an ordinary way. We are so resourceful. It's just a wonder, isn't it? So we have found a way to use Dharma in an ordinary way. We often collect Dharma. This is something that we've spoken of many times. There are those people that make the Dharma scene. They make the Dharma scene. No, and they make sure they make the Dharma scene. Every opportunity that they get, they have a list probably tattooed on their arm somewhere, of all the high lamas they've received initiations from. And they can't wait to find another Dharma practitioner that they can drop those names on. And they utilize Dharma in that case sometimes to become even more egocentric and self-serving than they ever were before. Which is really a shame when you think about it. And the tragedy really belongs to that person, not to anybody else. Dharma isn't damaged, but that person is damaged. And so we collect Dharma as though it were some sort of fine and fancy garment. But inside, we practice a hollow way. Like there's no heart. There's no heart for it. Lost is the idea that all sentient beings are equal because we're too busy looking down our nose at the ones that don't have those fancy empowerments. So what happened to the equality of all that lives? Where'd that go? Out the window. And we are so myopically interested in our ego and all of its qualities, like this great intellect that we have, and we're just like really examining just constantly in a myopic way, comprising that picture of our spiritual selves. You know, we're just making it, pasting it together and making it so pretty and nice. And in order to do that, you have to get lots of empowerments and follow lots of high lamas around. And you have to be able to say that you've got this just right and that just right. And also you have to be able to kind of look down your nose and purse your lips when you're doing it. The practitioner look. As opposed from which is different from the saint look, which is what everybody thinks I should have. The saint look is, which I refuse to do because you can't see my eyeshadow. So, I know I'm making a joke about this, but there's something very serious that I'm trying to talk about here. And that is, utilizing Dharma in this way is a terrible shame. It's a tragedy. Because what is singularly and uniquely precious and pure, what is this incredible golden ship that we can cross the ocean of suffering with? This phenomenal, pure endeavor, this pure reality that has within it the way to bring about the cessation of suffering. We are using as though it were garbage, as though it were anything else. And then we wonder why it is that we're kind of iffy on the path, you know. We go along for a while and we're doing pretty good. We're kind of beefed up. I don't know, we just had an interview with our teacher maybe, and teacher gave you a little sugar in the arm, you know. Feel real good now, beefed up. Or else maybe you heard a really inspiring class, or else maybe you attended some sort of Buddhist thing and you felt in with the in group of Buddhists there. And so kind of pumped up, but then eventually we find that we're dry, old on the path, you know, dry and kind of yucky, like dead inside. These are the very reasons. If we are using our Dharma experience as an opportunity to change something extraordinary and gorgeous into something ordinary and regular, then inside, in our practice, in our hearts, we turn a corner that we never, ever, ever want to turn. The corner into faking it. The corner into not really practicing but acting like it. The corner into, I don't know, wearing mama or daddy's clothing in the Dharma, but not having the heart for it. These thoughts of the preciousness of the three precious jewels, of the cause and conditions inherent in samsara, of the sufferings of samsara, of the faults of samsara, all of these thoughts, followed one by one, are the most precious and nourishing that you can practice on the path. Even though you'll go on to higher teachings, even though you can get downright smart and academic. If there's no heart for practice in that way, the result won't be much. Because you can learn excessive stuff anywhere. You know, you don't have to go to a Buddhist temple to do that. You can learn excessive stuff in any university. You could even go to community colleges and learn excessive stuff. It's a lot cheaper there. You can just be an excessive stuff collector and research it on your own. But when it comes to practicing the Dharma, to realize how extraordinary this is and how different, how unique, how precious, this is most necessary. And so you're asking yourself, then what is the point? The point of practicing Dharma, of course, is naturally laid out when you follow these thoughts that I've just touched on. The fundamental thoughts that turn the mind towards Dharma. It's kind of laid out that way. To understand the preciousness, to understand how rare an opportunity is, to understand how needed it is. It's kind of laid out naturally in the path. It's up to us to go back and rework it, and keep ourselves new and fresh. The best way to practice the path is humbly, not arrogantly. And should you come to the point where your knowledge is such that it now allows you to become arrogant, you have failed. You have failed on the path. If on the other hand you come to the point that your knowledge is so great that you understand you know nothing, there you go. There you go. That's the way to practice. And the other thing that has to be remembered is, where is the success? Where's the success? Is it in the book where you write down how many accumulations you have? Is it on your mala that has a marker and it goes to show how many you did? No. The success is in you, within you. And the success is measured by watching the change in your habituals, the increase in your good qualities, and most of all, the pacification of the hatred, ignorance, pride and arrogance, jealousy, selfishness. All of these qualities gradually over time in our Dharma practice will begin to change. If we're not seeing a change, then we have to go back, reason things through from the beginning, and walk through the whole process again, so that we can remember why we're this and practice accordingly. It's not enough to meet with the high teachers and get the high empowerments and practicing a practice that has a high name to it. That's just not enough. Then you're treating Dharma like something ordinary. you're graduating from, I don't know, the Volkswagen bus you had when you were a teenager to a Jaguar convertible. Which is nice. It's nice to have a Jaguar convertible. However, I mean, I'd like one. If any of you wants to buy me one, go ahead. So, it's nice to have a Jaguar convertible, but it's only a thing. It's just an object. And if your practice of Dharma is like that, and you're going through these different phases in order to get yourself more and more educated on it, if you're going through a kind of collecting process or a dry, I'm not really here with it kind of process, then under those conditions you're treating Dharma as very ordinary. Now remember, if you will, that the seed is always consistent with the fruit. That's one irrefutable fact. Can't change that. Even the Buddha himself couldn't change that. Because cause and result are related. They are the same. They are exacting. So if we then, even if we're great, we're really good at this, we say lots and lots of hundreds of thousands of mantras and we collect all this information. But if we treat it like that, putting it in a basket, collecting it, making it bigger, shining it up, thinking of different levels of practice like, I got to get through this book. If we think like that, we have made Dharma into an ordinary thing, and because of the sameness of the seed and the fruit, what will the result be? It will be ordinary. It will be ordinary. It will not be the extraordinary result that we originally set out to find. Instead of enlightenment, instead of the realization or the awakening to the fundamental ground of being, instead of abiding spontaneously in the primordial wisdom state, free of contrivance and distinction, instead of that, we'll be driving a big Dharma car. Instead of that, we will literally have taken our egos and strengthened them. The heart to practice, the intention to practice purely, the awareness of cause and condition, the awareness of the plight of sentient beings, the inspiration from the heart to keep on going. These are the real treasures in Dharma. Again and again and again, I'm saying this, and I just don't know if I can be heard loud enough, but I'll tell you that in the past, there have been many great practitioners and many great scholars. And not all the great scholars accomplished very much in terms of benefiting others or in terms of making the world a better place, liberating beings. And there are many great practitioners that know all the bells and whistles. And the same goes there. But there are also those that in the past have been noted to be only simple practitioners. Om Mani Padme Hum, that's all. But with such love. Such, maybe holding the idea in their mind that they simply want to be a fountain of compassion. So we say that compassionate mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, again and again and again, practicing to accomplish the twofold purpose of self and others. With that kind of heart. And these same practitioners, in many cases, are reported to have indicated that they were ready to make their transition, that they were ready to die, go into their home and ask not to be disturbed for 3 days. And then when the family comes in 3 days later, they find evidence that the person has attained the rainbow body, like nothing's left but the hair, nails, and clothing. There are many cases like that, many saints that were singularly unimpressive on the outside, completely unimpressive, with no arrogance or no idea to make themselves out to be saintly, with no, indication that they were fantastic and fine inside their hearts, because outwardly they just were regular. They just looked like regular old sloppy guys, goofy guys. Maybe they couldn't even read. Maybe they couldn't even recite any prayers. They just didn't know them. But that intention, that holding the three precious jewels with such devotion and such pure view, that inspiration to practice for the sake of sentient beings and to never give up. This is the kind of power that Dharma has to transform. Couple that with being able to learn more and more in a progressive way, being able to learn extraordinary, profound techniques of generation and completion stage practice. Now that's the best of all worlds. But if I had to sacrifice one, I would never sacrifice the heart. Never. And we, as Westerners, that's a particularly important point for us. Because most likely in our lifetimes, not all the Dharma will be practiced, or will be translated. We ourselves probably aren't going to go sit in a cave for about 20 years. It may not happen. It could. Some of you have indicated that you want to spend a retreat. Well, great. But for a lot of us, it won't. We just won't be able to do that, maybe, except for occasionally. We're busy, and this is a worldly time now. Worldly time and worldly culture. And from a cultural point of view, we don't have that much support, my big job here is to try to make Buddhism more normal in America. That's what I'm trying to do. But until that happens, we don't have much cultural support. When people see our nuns riding a bus, they're not going to sit up and give a nun a seat. They're going to ask her where the Redskins toga party is. Prepare, you'll get it. You'll hear that question. So we have a particularly difficult situation, almost like remedial Buddhism, in a way. And we have to work very, very hard and be very, very aware of posture, because that is our greatest guide now. We may have to utilize our best shot, which is not really accomplishing all Dharma in the sense of going academic and taking, every single branch of the teaching and accomplishing it the way some of the great older masters did, that they just were so hungry to accomplish the Dharma that everything. Never have that chance. So as Americans, how is Dharma going to be ours? As Westerners, how is it going to be ours? How is it going to feel like our faith? How are we ever going to be at home in this? It's always going to be a little weird. The colors are strange. The images. You look on the altar, everybody there has slanted eyes. So as Westerners, we're going, this is interesting. Feels sort of like maybe black people in a Episcopalian church. You look up at the picture and Jesus looks pretty darn white to me. So it's kind of like that. We have these cultural problems, these cultural crossovers. How are we going to make that our religion? How are we going to feel at home in this? There's only one way. Gradually over time, the academics will become available. Gradually over time, it will become more common in our country, but until then, it is the heart that matters. It is the heart. For us to make Buddha Dharma culturally, uniquely, and individually as well ours, we have to follow the thoughts, the fundamental, logical, reasonable progression of thoughts, so that we can see the reasonableness of that kind of kindness, of that kind of loving concern for the welfare of sentient beings. We must have the courage to come face to face with the faults of cyclic existence, rather than the kind of cowardice you see nowadays when everybody, people have this, is sort of a trend now to go, oh, everything is perfect. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Everything is so perfect. But talk to people who are experiencing war and famine. Talk to people who are born with handicaps. Talk to people who are suffering intensely at the loss of a loved one. Talk to people who don't know whether they can walk down the street without getting shot in their neighborhood. Talk to that and see if it's all perfect. To put yourself in that kind of box, to lock yourself into that kind of, I don't know, what's the word for that? Daze. To lock yourself into that kind of daze is really kind of cowardly, kind of irresponsible. Because we also have the power to observe with our eyes the true situation, the situation of samsara. It is flawed and faulted. Yes, there are happy, ecstatic, beautiful moments in it, but they are interspersed with other kinds of moments. And there is equal suffering. Samsara is filled with suffering. So we follow this thought through and we really observe it with that kind of vajra courage, to really see it and to see the suffering of others, to follow the thoughts through and to get ourselves to the point where in our hearts we are moved, we are motivated. We truly wish to make this world a better place, and all worlds, seen and unseen. So this carrying of the heart in our practice and keeping the heart alive, having the heart for practice. For Westerners, this may be what carries us through. This, I feel, is necessary in order to practice the path at all well. And I don't see how one could practice the path without that kind of loving concern, without that kind of motivation. Culturally, we have a different experience. There are many Asian countries that have grown up with Buddhism. I think about Tibetans and others as well. They've grown up with Buddhism, and their parents did it, and the parents before them, and the Dalai Lama did it, and all the teachers and all the monasteries did it, and everybody that went anywhere and accomplished anything in their lives did it. So the message that they would be getting, at least in times, the message that they would be getting is, what else would you do? Of course you're going to practice Dharma. I mean, these are people that when their relatives die, they don't get taken off in a pretty little box and made scent-free. Their relatives die, and it's a corpse, kiddo, and it stinks. And they get death, and they see poverty, and they see suffering. If somebody's born with one leg shorter than the other, there's no surgery to fix it. It's just that way. You know, that kind of thing. So in their minds, and culturally, in a way, there's a kind of a natural, grounded in reality intelligence that's there, that they can say, look at the faults of existence. What else would you do but practice Dharma? What else would you do besides try to accomplish the twofold purpose of ending the suffering of self and others? I mean, doesn't seem reasonable to do anything else. Well, we're getting stamps. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. So, but here in this country, it's quite different. We are raised with a whole set of different morals, set of different ideas, different goals. Mama tells you you're going to be success if you're a girl. First of all, you should marry a doctor. And also, you should have children that are doctors. And if you could find a degree in there somewhere for yourself, that's cute too. But, you know, give us another 20 years before that's really necessary. So, and if you're a man, you've got to have 2 cars and a chicken in your pot and a wife and 2.4 kids. And, you know, you know how it is. Has anyone ever had a 0.4 kid? I was just wondering about that. Anyway. So, and we are told that if you get there first, and if you succeed, your ambition, and if you're powerful, and if you're strong, and if you build yourself up, and if you make your world like practically a celestial palace mandala around you, your ego, of course, around your ego, then you're a success. We just have a different place that we're coming from, and it's going to take some time. And the reason why I keep nagging on Westerners to develop that heart for practice is because this is what it takes for us. We don't come by this naturally. And for us to have been born as Westerners, we have to assume that this is our own personal habitual tendency. You can't really blame it on the culture. We're talking about interdependent arising. We're talking about mated causes that arise interdependently, cause and result. We have a certain habitual tendency, therefore we're born in a certain culture, not the other way around. So sorry. Very, very important for us to develop a sense of the nobility of our practice, a sense of a deep heart for practice. Back the next time, that's what I'm going to concentrate on, because I think that along with your academic studies, that kind of deepening and awareness must go hand in hand, or Dharma will not take a firm root here in the West, except in the baskets of people who are collecting it. And that's not firm enough, not by a long shot. So I'm asking you to pay attention to yourself. That sounds funny because here we are talking about eliminating ego cherishing. And at the same time I'm saying pay attention to yourself. And how I mean that is look inside. Where's the heart? What's going on in there? Are you alive? Are you alive on the path? Or are you just going through the motions? If you are, there are many more fun things besides Buddhism. Really, you should get a life. You could take up roller skating and, you know. I know lots of movies that are more fun than these classes. So if that's what, you know, if you're in that posture, save yourself the trouble. I know I'm being silly. Of course it's better to practice Dharma than, even if you're practicing it badly, it's better to do that than go rob a bank somewhere. I'm being silly, but please try to understand the point I'm trying to make. That it is the heart, it is the intention. And one must use Dharma as what it is. That which does not arise from samsara and does not result in samsaric results. Dharma is that which is precious and extraordinary. It arises from the primordial ground of our being, our Buddha nature, and it results in Buddhahood. And it is that which will bring about the cessation of suffering for all beings. Treat it accordingly. Practice honorably and accordingly. Rather than wondering if you're wearing the right clothes and if you're at the right temple and if you're in the right position and rather have a heart